All right. Hello, everyone. Give a second to get started. Everyone's doing well out there today. Okay. So today I figured I'll do something a little different. And instead of just building a project off something that I'm already familiar with or I've already built previously, I figured we can walk through the document. Hey, what's going on, my friend? Thanks for joining and checking me out. Got any questions, feel free to ask away. I'll be happy to answer them. But what I want to do today is, instead of building a project based off something that I've already done, we're going to walk through the documentation and implement what we're reading into the project. So today we'll build a simple notes app using plain old HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And we'll implement storage to give it full stackability. We won't build the CRUD out, but we will do the ability to create and get all notes and maybe delete. We'll see how things go. But the start of the show will be to talk through local storage, how it works, how to implement it, and most importantly, leveraging the documentation to learn something new, if you will, how I go about leveraging it. And you could as well too, so that your learning doesn't solely depend on one style, if you will. You have the ability to really learn the preferred way as it relates to development, and that's just reading the docs. That's basically the preferred method. Video tutorials are great, but where the real learning comes in and the real skill is being able to read the documentation and implement what you learn. And that's what we're going to do today. So I'm on the MDN Developer Web Docs website. The site I visit really frequently, and I would suggest any new developers out there that are learning to code spend some time on this particular website, bookmark it, because pretty much everything that you'll need you can just about find within this site to kind of help you do whatever it is that you're trying to do. But today we are on the local storage property website, or excuse me, web page within the MDN docs. And it's just reading that the local storage read-only property of the window interface allows you to access the storage object for the document's origin. The stored data is saved across the browser session. Local storage is similar to a session storage, except that while local storage data has no expiration time, session storage data gets cleared when the page session ends. That is, when the page is closed. Local storage data for a document loaded in a private browsing or incognito session is cleared when the last private tab is closed. So basically what this is speaking to is that the way this local storage API is going to work is just like with session storage. So if you're not very familiar with session storage, that's a way that you can store a authenticated user or give a user access within a particular page. And the way you'll do it, there's a couple ways. One way is to use a session. And what this is saying is that this is going to work very similar to a session storage. The main difference is that session storage data gets cleared when the page session ends, meaning that if you close that browser out, restart it, clear the cache of cookies, then that session that was previously being used to manage that user will no longer be available. But with local storage data, we will be able to maintain that data because it doesn't have any session associated with it the same way as session storage does. So that's pretty cool to know. Value: a storage object which can be used to access the current origins of the local storage space. Okay. Exception: security error. Thrown in one of the following cases, the origin is not a valid scheme, host, port, tuple. This can happen if the origin uses the file or data schemes. For the example, the request violates a policy decision. For example, the user has configured the browsers to prevent the page from persistent data. So this is something that you could do on your own if you chose to. You can configure the browser so that it doesn't maintain or store data. You can have it so that it keeps that. Well, the benefit of that would be that it should allow your browser to navigate and function without a lot of clutter. It shouldn't be a need to clear cache and cookies so frequently because you're not persisting any data. It could be a little bit of a pain because you'll have to basically log in and put in passwords and all the little things that you may not realize that your browser does for you. You'll have to store that data or find a way to maintain it, since some browsers have the ability to not allow data to be persistent. Note that if the user blocks cookies, browsers will probably interpret that as an instruction to prevent the page from persistent data. So if it's a good thing. I understand the need to not want to have cookies and have breadcrumbs left, but just kind of know that the downside to that is those cookies allow us to kind of quickly access things that's stored locally in cache, so we don't spend so much time waiting on APIs and data to load from websites. So it's a trade-off, not necessarily to say one is worse or better than the other. It's more so of a preference and what is going to give you the experience that you're looking for. So in the description, the keys and values stored with local storage are always in the UTF-16 string format, which uses 2 bytes per character. As with objects, integer keys are automatically converted to strings. So we know that the way we'll be sending this data is UTF-16 in a string format. And as with the objects, the integer keys are automatically stored as strings, which is just going to make it easier to work with as we are doing different things with the data. So just kind of keep that in mind as we are creating our IDs and accessing them within the actual web page. Local storage data is specific to the protocol of the document, in particular for a site loaded over HTTP. Local storage returns a different object than the local storage for a corresponding site loaded over HTTPS. This is just saying that you'll receive one object type for a traditional HTTP site, which is a non-secure site, and it'll send a different object for the corresponding site loaded over HTTPS. So shouldn't be anything that you need to be aware of for this example, but maybe something to kind of keep in mind if for whatever reason you are building out a project, haven't decided upon what's going to be the best database storage for you, so you're storing things locally. So just kind of keep in mind that that's something you'll need to kind of care for as you're building out your project. For documents loaded from file URLs, that is, files open in the browser directly from the user's local file system rather than being served from a web server, the requirements for local storage behavior are unidentified and may vary among different browsers. Okay, good information to know. In all current browsers, local storage seems to return a different object for each file. URL, in other words, Each file URL seems to have its own unique local storage area, but there are no guarantees about that behavior, so you shouldn't rely on it because, as mentioned above, the requirements for the file URLs remain undefined. So it's possible that browsers may change the file URL handling for local storage at any time. In fact, some browsers have changed their handling for it over time. So just something to be aware of. Typically, you won't do much with local storage. That's typically ran in a local environment. So it shouldn't be a whole lot to be too concerned with, but it's just kind of good to know that as you're building a project and if you add complexity to it, there could be some little nuances that could kind of trip you up along the way that you kind of want to be aware of based upon the browser. But it sounds like based on this, and I'm not sure when this was written, but these type of things get worked on daily by a lot of developers. So I'm pretty sure it's going to continue to evolve and improve over time. So now we get into some of the fun stuff. So the following snippet accesses the current domain's local storage object and adds a data item to it using storage.setItem. So this gives you the ability to tap into the setItem API using local storage, and this is taking in 2 parameters. We'll be using this within our project, so this is kind of good to see how we should write the syntax. And this is basically what you would do if this was something that you were exposed to for the first time. Build out a simple project, make sure that it works, and then go ahead and put a little more time into the UI. That's my preferred development approach, but feel free to do whatever you're comfortable with. So the syntax for reading local storage item is as follows. In this example, it has a constant named cat equal to local storage, and it's using the .get method to get my cat from the local storage. The syntax for removing local storage item is as follows. Local storage.remove item, and this is what we'll be removing in this example, which is my cat. The syntax for removing all of the local storage items is clear. So that's just a way if you just wanted to clear everything out and start over. But typically you would want to delete an item individually and not clear everything out of the database. But I'm sure there are examples where that's relevant and you would want to do that. I'm doing good, my friend. I'm doing good. I appreciate you asking. How about yourself? Enjoyed a day off from work today, so that is always a good thing. How about yourself? But yeah, those are the 4 core methods there, though. Um, Sorry about that. Just wanted to check some things out. So specifications, I won't worry about diving into that. It is compatible with most browsers, so that is a good sign. So it shouldn't be too much of an issue building this out. So we have the documentation here, and this is what we'll use to implement the ability to have a full stack local storage notes app that we're going to build out. So we'll go ahead and get started. So in my VS Code, I have an open directory on my desktop where I'll be storing my project. And in this, I'll just place it in a directory named notes. We'll start by building out the HTML first. So add a file named index.html. And I'm using VS Code, so I don't have to necessarily type out all the boiler that's needed. But in this example, I'm going to use, or in this project rather, I'm going to use the exclamation mark and use the image abbreviation by pressing tab, and it's going to automatically give me the boiler that's needed with my project in order to establish an HTML document. And I think what we'll do is hello world. I appreciate everyone that is tuned in. Let me know where you tuned in from. Just building a full stack notes app using local storage, plain old HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you got any questions or have any suggestions, I am open to feedback, but I genuinely appreciate you taking the time to stop by. So don't be afraid or shy. Say hello. Okay. We'll go ahead and use the live server extension just to get something up on screen so that we can watch and build. And instead of using it in Edge, I may use this one. 1 second. And we'll go into a private browser, rearrange this a little bit. So this is the live server version of the HTML site that we have up. We'll add some styling and obviously JavaScript as well. Let me just get this up on screen so you can see it a little better. Now, let me know if that is easily, or you can easily see that. If I need to make it any bigger or anything, just let me know. As a matter of fact, I'll just make it a little bigger right there. All right, so first thing is we'll start by building out the HTML, the framework of the project. We'll remove this title and give it a custom title instead of it saying document as you see it right there. We'll just say JS Notes app, JS Notes app. Save, and once I save it, you see it automatically updates. That's all with VS Code and one of the extensions that it has with it. Hello, how's it going, Miss Shakira from Georgia? Thanks for stopping in. Thank you so much for showing a little bit of love. I appreciate it. We've updated the title. The next thing we'll do, I'll replace this hello world and add a main HTML tag. And we'll start with a H1, which will serve as a header, just saying my my notes app. Click save, and then we can see that we automatically get the notes app on screen. And we'll remove this padding and control the padding ourselves in just a moment. Right now, as you can see, it has the default padding. So, you know what? I tell you what, we'll just go ahead and add in the CSS file now. So in the in the notes folder, add a file named style.css. Now, in order to connect this style sheet to this HTML document, we need to use the link tag. And it needs a href. It needs a rel of style sheet, because that's what we'll be using it for, and a href of the name of the CSS document. And you can name it whatever you want. I just chose to name it style to keep it simple. And so the name of it is style.css. So now, just to test this out to make sure that it is connected, we'll use the asterisk with curly braces to target the actual document. So if we wanted to make any changes to the entire document, not the body, we will use the curly braces in order to do so. So to start, we'll start by removing the padding. We'll set it to 0. And we'll also set the margin to 0. And now you notice that we no longer have the padding and margin that we had previously. And we'll go box size in the border box. So that confirms that the document is connected and it is set up to manage the style of the index.html document. So I'm going to add just a little bit of styling to this so that it looks a little better. Body, set the margin to 40 pixels in auto. What that did is just gave some margin at the top. This is given margin at the top and bottom of 40 pixels, and the left and right is going to be set to auto. We'll set the maximum width to 650 pixels. You can't really tell right now because I have the window shrink, but if I open this up, you'll see that the maximum width of this is 650 pixels, and the margin is set to left to auto so that it automatically centers the content. Just so you can get a better visual, we'll set the background color to orange red. And as you can see, the entire color changes, but we've set the maximum width of the body so that it doesn't go any, so that this text doesn't go any further out than the maximum width that we set. Then I'm going to just make some changes to the font size. We'll go font size of 18. My number wasn't on pixel. That's just managing the size of the text. And we'll set the color to pound 444. And that gives it a lighter gray color. And we'll set the padding to, let's try 10 pixels. Okay, and I just gave it a little padding at the top and the bottom there, so perfect. You can make this smaller so you can see the code better. Excuse me. I think I'd rather do it like this. It's fine. And then now, just to set a little line height, this is personal preference, nothing relevant to the project. We'll set the line height to 1.2. Okay. So now that is just some basic styling to get us started. We'll come back and add more styling after we've made sure that the JavaScript and the local storage functionality works. But for right now, this is enough to get us started. So we'll go back to the index.html page and continue to add a little more style or a little more text. We'll need a way to submit the notes to the local storage, and of course that will require a form, and the form will have a input. The type will be text, and as you can see, type gives you a lot of different options. If it were a password, the HTML will automatically asterisk out the text that's being entered. If it was image, it'll be looking for a source. Number, it'll be looking for a number, etc. I'd encourage you just to play around with it a little bit. And from there, you'll be able to kind of see what all capabilities it has so that you can better service your project. So right now, we're just going to build out the framework of the project so that you can see what it is that we'll be building. So it's not going to be pretty. Once we have the functionality working, meaning that we can add in notes and we can get the notes that we add in, then we'll begin to style it so that it looks a little prettier. Great question. Great question. And then we'll add a placeholder so you can see something on screen, and we'll just say note title. Click save. And then now you see we have a input with a type of text and a placeholder of no title. The only thing I want to add next is give it an ID so we can identify it. Once we add in the JavaScript, the ID is going to be title. And you won't notice any changes on screen with the ID. That's just basically the way that we'll communicate, or that's basically what we'll use to capture the title that's being entered in by the user so that we can store it within the local storage. And then for this project, in addition to a input, we'll have a text area which is going to give us the ability to add a little more text if we want to add some specific content to it. So I'll set the ID to content. Sorry, I left off a T. Then we'll set the placeholder so that this is what you'll see on screen right here. You see note title, and I'll just make this capitalized. And then the text area will have content area. Well, no, we'll say write your notes here. Click save. Okay. So now we just have a input and text area, which is going to give us the ability to capture information because this is being used within a form. And the last thing we'll need in order for this form to work is a button. So underneath the text area, we'll use the HTML button. We'll say add note. So our button will need a type of submit. And then our form, we can't forget that because that's what we will use to send the information to our backend. Our form is going to need a ID, a unique way to identify it. And I'm just going to name it note form just to keep it simple. And then finally, what we'll need to do within this is have the ability to display the notes once we have created one. So underneath this form, we'll add a section. Inside the section, we'll give it a ID or an identifier. We can name this notes list. This is going to be where we're storing our notes. And right now we don't see anything because we haven't created any notes just yet. But eventually, once we do, they should appear in this notes list, which is going to be directly under the form. And right now you can't see anything on screen, but just so you can see where it's at, we'll say title. There, you can see it on screen. But we're going to dynamically populate this information using JavaScript. We're not going to hard code it into the HTML. So that's basically all the HTML that we need. The final thing we'll want to do before we add some basic styling, I think I want to add some styling before we add the logic, is connect our JavaScript file to the HTML file. So let's begin by adding a JavaScript file to the project. So in the notes directory, we'll add a file named main.js. So inside of the body, we're at the point now where we want to connect this main.js file to our HTML file. And we know in order to do that, we need to use a script tag. And it needs a source, and the source is going to be the name of the file. And in this case, we named it main.js. You can name it whatever you want. In fact, I would encourage you to name it something unique to the project that you're building, specifically if it's going to be stored within a directory. But the more descriptive you could be with the name of it, the better. But because this is just a simple project, I didn't worry about giving it some unique name. The main thing is that you always include .js, which is just telling the terminal or the code editor that's a JavaScript file, and that's the code that's going to be written in that particular file, and it's associated with this HTML file. And you can have more than one JavaScript file if need be. We just don't need it for this project. The one will be suffice. So now let's just add a little bit of styling, since this is all of the HTML that we're going to need for the project. So in the style.css, inside of the body, I want to change the color. So we'll set the background color to £F3. Forgot my num lock isn't on. F3, F4, F6. and it's just a very light purple or blue. Not sure what you refer to it to be. And then I think we'll keep the text color as is. I do want to center this H1. So we'll go text align center, and that just move our H1 to the center of the screen. After that, let's style the form. I think that is the next thing there. Yep, we have the H1 and then the form. So let's style that next, and I'll move this over. So the first thing we'll do is set the direction of our form, and we'll set it to flex. And I noticed you notice that it didn't change a whole lot, but what it did change was it placed the text area, the input, and the button all in the same row directly next to each other with no padding and no space. Then we'll need to set the flex direction. Right now, the direction is set to row. So obviously, I'm going to change it to column. And that is the text area, or excuse me, the form in a column with the text area at the, excuse me, the input at the top, the text area in the middle, and a button right beneath it. And then after we've set the direction, we'll probably want to give it a little bit of space. So we'll go gap of 10 pixels. That looks fine. Then we'll set the maximum width of this to 400 pixels. And as you can see, it's just giving it a little bit of a maximum width so that we have padding on both sides. Then we'll give it a margin of 0, auto, and we'll go 12 pixels. See what that looks like. Okay. And that just, as you can see, the margin is just moving it to, and the first, excuse me, because I had the way I have it written out, this first one is the margin for the top and bottom, and that is going to be set to 0. The left and right are going to be auto, and then you're giving it some additional for the entire thing of 12 pixels. So now we have the form layout designed as we desire. Let's go ahead and update the input and text area. So we'll go input and text area. And then for these, I want to give a padding of, let's go 10 pixels. So that just gives each of those inputs a little more padding, so it's a little easier to read as you begin to type things out. And then we'll give it a font size for consistency. With this one, we'll set it to, we'll give it 8 pixels and see what that looks like. That might be a little too small. Let's go 12. Okay, that works. We'll give it a border of 1 pixel solid, and the color will be #CCC. Okay. I think I'll set the border radius to 4 pixels. I don't care for the outlines personally, so I'm going to set outline to none. There we go. All right. So now let's just begin to style this button a little bit. We'll give it a background color of #111. The text color, we use color for that. I'm going to set it to white. We'll give it some padding of, I went 10 pixels with that. Let me go 8 pixels. See what it looks like. Give it a border radius of none. No, let's go border radius, I'm sorry, of 4 pixels for consistency. And then we'll go border none. And I think that looks pretty good. We'll go cursor pointer. go. All right. And I know we can't see the notes list just yet, so we'll come back and style that in a moment. But let's go ahead and add in the star of the show, if you will, and that is the JavaScript, since we have this part already kind of built out. So first thing we'll want to do is get access to all of the elements that we have on the page, and if you on the HTML, and if you recall, we have the node ID, the input, the content, and the notes list. Those are all of the elements that we want to get access to. So the first one will go, and I'm sorry, the first one is we also have form as well too. Remember that one is note form. So we'll go const, and I'm just going to name this form. We'll set it equal to document.getElement by ID. And the name of this is note form. Let's make sure. Yep. Just to triple check and keep myself honest, I'm just going to copy it and paste it in here. Save. Next one we want to get access to is the title. So we'll say title, and then we'll go, I probably should be a little more descriptive and say title input, and we'll go document.getElement by ID. We want to get the note title, and I think we just named that title from based on the ID. That's what it's capturing. Yep. So inside of this, we'll just pass in title. Then we'll go const content input and set it equal to document.getElement by ID. And we're going to pass in the content. Maybe 1 second here. Sorry about that. Works. All right. And then, so for that one, we'll need to pass in content. And I think the last one that we want to get access to is the list itself. That is right here. So we'll go const note list. It's equal to, that'll be the same thing, get element by ID, passing the note list. So what we have, we're just building a notes app. Highlight of the show, if you will, is the ability to use local storage in order to store the information versus a database, or just building an app and then once we refresh the page, we lose all of the content. So this is something that you can actually use. We started by going over the documentation that kind of describes out how to use local storage and the 4 key APIs that are associated, the 4 key methods that are associated with the API. And we're going to be implementing those in just a moment. Right now, we've already created the HTML, which is the structure of the layout. We went ahead and gave everything some styling except for the note list. Obviously, we haven't created the note list just yet, but we're going to work on that in a moment. And then now we're working on the JavaScript so that this is going to give us the life and the functionality of the project. So that's what we're working on now. So we'll start by saying let notes is equal to json.parse. And what we're parsing in is local storage, and we're going to use the get item method that we saw from the docs right here, local storage.doc. And then as it just indicated, what we want to pass in is what we're going to be getting, and that will be notes. Or if we don't have any notes, we want to return a empty array. And this is just giving us, this is just writing out the ability to write notes to our local storage API using the local storage API. The name of the notes and the database, if you will, would be notes. And if we have notes, we'll pass them. Otherwise, we're just going to pass an empty array. So then now we need a function to save notes. So we'll say save notes. And we're going to be using the local storage.set item. Remember, we're passing in notes, and we'll go json.stringify and we'll use passing in the notes that we're creating here. So this basically serves as the function that we will write in order to connect to the database. That's going to give us access to add and get notes from our local storage. And if you aren't familiar with these methods are coming directly from the MDN documentation under local storage. And these are the main 4 methods that we would use in order to gain access. Okay. So now that we have that function, the first thing that I want to do is let's go ahead and add the ability to render notes or create notes, even though and I know we don't have it styled just yet, but I think it makes more sense to add this ability first. Then we'll add the ability to add notes, and then once we test it out, we'll see it on screen. So we'll create a function name, and we'll just say render notes. Inside of this, we want to get access to this note list. So we'll say note list dot enter HTML. This is going to give us the ability. What we're doing here is writing the note list to the HTML that has the ID of note list, and that's what we just captured just a moment ago. And then we'll use we'll say notes dot for each, which is a method from JavaScript that's going to say for each of these notes we want to do something. The first thing we need to do is name it. So for every note in this example, we're just going to name it note. And I also want to pass in the index so that I can use it for a key or for whatever it is that I like to do with it. With a arrow function, that's fine. Man, one of y'all ain't tell me that I did brackets instead of the braces. That would have been very helpful and saved me the minute of even seeing that error. That's all good. And then for each note, we want to create a card. So I'm going to say const and name it card. And we'll go document dot create element. And what we want to create is a div. So we're going to create a div for each note that we create. Uh-oh. Function. So there we go. Okay. And then we'll say card dot class name. We're going to define a class name for the card, and we'll give it a class name of note card, so that for each note that we create, we're going to create a div, and we're going to give that div a class name of note card, and then we'll go card.inner.html. And then now I just want to dynamically create what that card is going to look like. So we'll go slash and then the backticks. Here. Oh, it's just basically a semantic way to write or organize information with HTML. But I could talk more about that in a future video, but that's a good question. Maybe I should do something to speak about that in the future. But let me correct some of this syntax error I got going on here. That's in a first thing I want with it is a H3. Let me see something here. Something off. Give me a moment. Fix that. So we'll go. Each one will say notes for each. For each of those, we'll go notes index. Go const card is equal to document dot create element card dot class name is equal to note card. And then for each card, we're going to give it a class name of sorry, we already gave it a class name. We want to create it, so we'll say card.inner.html, and we'll set it equal to the backticks, temporal literals there, and I think it should have that one there. So let me just go with it for a second. First one will be a H3. Just going to do the H3 for right now. And we'll go slash $, and we'll pass in the note dot title. All right, and let me see something. Why is this giving me a error message here? Let me just pass in the rest of this. So go notes list dot append child and the card. Let me see something. This. All right, so it's not giving me a. We'll come back to it. But this is just going to give us the ability to display notes, and we can display more than just the card title. But for right now, I'm just going to show the title. But we'll come back and add more to it. Next up, I want the ability to add Yep. Yeah, next we'll do the ability to add a note next. So we'll say form.add event listener, and we want to listen for submit, and it will pass in the event. That's what we'll be listening for. We'll say e.prevent default, so that we prevent the default behavior of the form, the page refresh, and all that good stuff. We'll say const new note. And this is what we want to use to create a new note. We'll create a title. We know that all notes need a title, and we're going to be using the title input value. And then we'll also want to create we want to create the content, and that's going to be the content input dot value. All right, that's just basically going to give us the value of the notes that we're getting from the front end. Then once we get that, we'll say notes dot push. We're using the built-in push method to push the note into, to push the new note into the notes array. From there, we want to call save notes, which is going to save the notes into the array. Then we'll want to call render notes, which are going to render the notes onto the page. And then finally, we'll need to reset the form so that we have the ability to create a new note or whatever it is that we want to do, and we don't just have the old information there. So after we've done that, we'll just go and call render notes so that once we create a note, it is automatically displayed. So we don't have any errors, and I know it's not quite styled just yet, but I think we're in a position where we could go ahead and check this out. So we'll say test title, test content. So it is not displaying on screen. So it is probably something what I typed in with let me see. It's giving me a error message there. That's a good point. I guess you probably wouldn't. It wouldn't know if you weren't 100% familiar with it, but you saw that there was a little squiggly line on screen, so you knew something was wrong. You should have said so. No, but you're right. My apologies. I'll remove this. Sorry, accidentally hit a key there. Why is this thing giving me an error? Oh, I got notes. It should be noteless. Test title, test content, notes list. And it is getting the notes list, note list, and HTML for each one. I'm going to create a new note, index, card. We can create a div, give it a class name, a note card, the inner HTML. Add some style for right now. This shouldn't be impacting it, but I'm just gonna go note card. I'm gonna give it a background color of white, padding of 1. Well, no, we'll go 5 pixel. border radius of 6 pixels. I would have said like that. I wonder why it isn't kicking. Create the element in div. Creating the notes. Yep. What in the world is this? Yes, it is there. Check my developer tools here. Unexpected in to JSON.parse. What is wrong with that ending? I see why. It should have been. First off, let me fix that. After that, it should be this and then the empty array. That's where those developer tools come in handy. Let's go test title, test content. There we go. So it is passing in the note title. I just need to fix the format of it because that's where my backticks are off. But it should just be, let's do this. We'll pass it in like this. We'll go H3, and then inside of that, we'll just pass in the curly braces and we'll go note.title. There we go. So then now we can see the test title. So that works. We'll add another one just to make sure, but I hadn't set the layout either, so it may be a little off. Test 2, test content 2. Okay, we just need to style the layout a little bit. So we'll go back to the CSS right above the note card. Pound notes list. Make sure I named it notes list. Yep. And then for this, I like to use grid. So we'll give it a grid layout. And we'll give it a gap of 8 pixels. We'll go maximum width of, let's go 500 pixels. Okay. And then we'll set the margin on the top and bottom to 0 and left and right to auto. Okay. So that takes care of that. Now, I think let's add the ability to delete it would just use .remove. So that should be simple enough. So we'll start with the JavaScript first. So right above render notes, we'll create a function named delete note. What we'll be passing into this is the index, which is kind of like the ID for it, if you will, the unique identifier. And we'll go notes.splice, S-P-L-I-C-E. This is a built-in JavaScript method that's going to allow you to remove something. And what we'll be removing is the note that matches that corresponding index. We'll need to then save the notes and re-render notes. So we have the function. Now we just need to create the button to delete a note. And I think I'll add it right here. We'll go button. Say delete. It is to do a new line. I think it is. Drawing a blank right now. It's okay. I just want to make sure this works. So we'll go on click. And what we'll be passing in is the delete note function that we just created. And every time we call it, or what we'll be passing in, we need to pass in the index. So we'll go delete note and give it the parentheses. And inside the parentheses, we'll add a slash, $ index. Okay. Click here. Let's see something. There we go. All right, so we see that the delete capability works. Sorry about that. I had a extra slash there and I'm going crazy. A long day for me. But that concludes a quick tutorial on using local storage with JavaScript and how to implement it into a HTML CSS project and make it full stack, if you will. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to give me a like. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next